An overview of this video, factors and multiples are terms that do need to be memorized so that students are understanding the difference between the two. They are related to a lot of important math concepts, which I will discuss as I go through each one, but essentially this is just math vocabulary that students need to have memorized so then they can apply it in the appropriate situation. Factors are numbers that evenly divide a certain number. I have the example 12 here, where I have the list of factors of 12 and the factor pairs. Some students like to think about it more in terms of the factor pairs, or two numbers that multiply together to make a target number. So in this situation, it's 12. So we have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. The list of the factors there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 12. I asked the students to write those in numerical order just so that they can easily see that they have them all there in order. And they can also think about the factor pairs. Factors are related to a lot of other concepts, which I have listed here. The most common concept that I will talk about on the next slide is rates and ratios. So you can think about that as reducing a fraction, because a rate or a ratio can also be written as a fraction. In getting into high school or upper middle school, they will be doing factoring out or simplifying algebraic expressions. So prime factorization is something that they'll do in 5th and 6th grade. So all of this is related to the concept of factors. So simplifying a rate here, we've got, if you're traveling 600 miles over 2 days, how many miles per day do you need to travel? You could think about that as a division problem, but you could also think about it as a ratio, 600 to 2, and dividing both numbers in the ratio by their greatest common factor, which is 2. Okay, so same thing in that next example, thinking about the best price for cookies and finding that unit rate. Multiples, on the other hand, are a product. Okay, so they're the result of multiplying a number by a whole number. And a lot of times the students think of it as counting by that number, counting by 5s or counting by 10s will give you a list of multiples. So in contrast to factors, the list of multiples is infinite. So they're always just asked to find, either the first 4 or 5 multiples or the least common multiple, which we will talk about coming up. Okay, so related concepts here, creating like denominators to add fractions together, for example. It's also related to multiplication and repeated addition. So if you're thinking about counting by 10s, then you're kind of thinking about 10 times 1, 10 times 2, 10 times 3, etc. And it's also related to divisibility rules, which I'll talk about at the end. Finding common multiples is a great situation to use math in the real world. So these types of situations are really interesting and engaging for the students, and it's also something to think about in your everyday life, like a hot dog and bun problem. So if hot dogs come in a pack of 6, but then buns come in a pack of 8, how many packs of each should I purchase so I don't have any leftover buns or hot dogs? So you're finding the least common multiple of 6 and 8, which is 24, and then you'll know you could purchase 4 packs of hot dogs and then 3 packs of buns, and then you'll have 24 of each. So that's a great situation where students could see the real world application. Same thing here with the buses. When will both buses be back at the stop? So they can think about the least common multiple between 12 and 10 and think about, the implications for the real world. In terms of grade level expectations, 4th graders should be able to list factors and factor pairs of any number up through 100. This is also closely related to determining numbers that are prime or composite. So students will understand that difference. They should also be able to list the first 4 or 5 multiples of any number, which just means they're counting by or multiplying that number by other whole number factors. And they should be able to reduce fractions, create equivalent fractions. In 6th grade, students should be able to find the greatest common factor of 2 numbers or the least common multiple of 2 numbers and apply both to real-world situations, like the ones that I described on the previous slide. A large part of 6th grade math is developing an understanding of rates and ratios, as I had already stated, and finding a unit rate and applying it to a real-world situation. Divisibility rules, I don't require that students memorize these, but they are very helpful if students are trying to predict the answer to a division problem. So that means, are they going to get a remainder? Should they expect to get a remainder or not? So here are some examples of divisibility rules. You've got 5, 2, and 3. I post these rules and we kind of review them so that students can internalize those rules. And this is also important if students are trying to determine if a number is prime or composite, if they're doing prime factorization, if they know some of the divisibility rules, then it can help with tougher numbers. For example, 51, a lot of people think, okay, that's a prime number, but if you know your divisibility rules, like your divisibility rule for 3, you can add the 2 digits, 5 plus 1, and get 6, then you'll know that that number is divisible by 3. Okay, so that's an example of how divisibility rules can help you. Otherwise, you're doing a lot of trial and error when you're trying to figure out if numbers are prime or composite, or if you're trying to start a prime factorization tree. So this is something that's helpful, but I don't require it to be memorized. It's just something that the students can think about.